For decades, Poland and the United States have shared values, geopolitical interests, as well as a common perception of opportunities and threats on the global stage. We've been friends, partners, and steadfast allies, regardless of political affiliations of subsequent governments in Warsaw and in Washington. Poland has always been an advocate of robust US presence in Europe, both economically and militarily. More than 90% of Poles hold a favorable view of America and Americans, a remarkable asset we can build on, strengthening and enhancing our political ties. Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting another segment of our conference, this time devoted to political relations between Poland and the United States, which is a topic, of course, which is very deeply and intricately related to the conversation we have just held a few minutes ago with our generals. We are going to speak with two distinguished speakers, guests from America, Congressman Tom Swatsey from New York City, the Republican Senator John Cornyn, Michał Kobosko, who is a member of the European Parliament and also representing the ruling coalition in Poland, and Maciej Przydacz, the former Foreign Affairs Advisor to President Duda and a former Deputy Foreign Minister. We'll start with a message from the Republican Senator from Texas, Mr. John Cornyn.
Hi, I'm Texas Senator John Cornyn. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I'm proud to support a strong U.S.-Poland relationship in Congress, which is built on shared priorities, respect for human rights, and a commitment to freedom. It's encouraging to see Poland step up and answer President Trump and Secretary Rubio's call for NATO countries to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP. The world is becoming increasingly dangerous, as you know, and I applaud Poland's efforts to lead the way so others will follow. Together, we can create a future of lasting peace and security. I look forward to many more years of friendship with Poland and our NATO allies. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you so much. It's always good to see and to hear true friends of Poland in American Congress. Now, let me introduce to you Michał Kobosko. As I said, now a member of the European Parliament, also representing the ruling coalition in Poland, and last but not least, the former head of the Atlantic Council's office in Warsaw.
We have constant discussions on the daily basis in the European Parliament about the armaments purchases and whether European countries, the member states of the European Union, should be solely buying and purchasing armaments within the European defense contractors. And my answer has always been, you should not just choose that you love your mom or your daddy, because we do, as Poland, we do have many contracts signed with American contractors, and these are extremely serious contracts and purchases for the Polish armed forces, and we will cooperate with American partners. We will buy the purchases and buy this equipment, and we will stick to our partnerships with American companies that are delivering to Poland. These are the critical purchases for the Polish armed forces. Saying that, yes, we have to spend much more on European defense, meaning our armed forces, but meaning also our defense industries. Defense industries which need to be developed in Europe. They were not until recently. You could easily say that Mr. Putin forced us to start thinking seriously about our own security for the very first time since the end of the Cold War here in Europe. So therefore, yes, we need to spend as well with the European defense industry. We have to start cooperating among the member states of the European Union, because we did not have such a cooperation in defense industries or joint defense purchases among the countries belonging to the European Union. But this is not 0-1. This is not black and white. I belong to the liberal group in the European Parliament called Renew Europe. This group has a big representation of the French politicians from President Macron party Renaissance, and they are pushing hard to make us kind of decide or pick by European, by just European. Sometimes they just mean by French. And our answer is that we will be buying from European contractors, from European defense industries, including Polish defense companies, but we will also stick to our contracts with United States. And since this is the best equipment available on the market, and we need this equipment to be delivered as soon or even sooner from the United States, that we need to keep cooperating with the US and play on these two areas, in these two fields, with both the European and American partners. Poland has been a very loyal partner of the United States. I believe in these ties, in these bonds. You could say, and I tend to say pretty often, that US presidents come and go, such as European prime ministers, all the members of the European Parliament, they come and go, while the European-American bond should be there forever. We are the closest partners. Poland is one of the key allies and partners of the United States in Europe, and we have to make sure that this will continue into the future. Our security, global security, but also regional security, security of Poland is seriously endangered right now. And this is why we cannot just say and listen to those who are saying, forget the links, the transatlantic links, we should solely concentrate on our European cooperation. Yes, for Poland, being part of the European Union, being part of the European project is absolutely fundamental. At the same time, being in a very close relations with the US is also fundamental for our security today and for our security tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Michał. Let me welcome now Mr. Tom Swartzy, an honorable member of the House of Representatives representing New York City. Mr. Swartzy, good morning and good afternoon.
Dzień dobry. I'm happy to join
I expected
you.
that. I expected that. Mr. Swartzy, I vividly remember the last conversation we held in Washington, D.C., roughly a year and a half ago. We talked mostly about the war in Ukraine and Poland's role in this new geopolitical configuration. And I have to tell you, frankly, I still appreciate your friendship and expressions of sympathy towards Poland and Poles. But let me start this conversation with an unusual question. We are both Catholics. No wonder in your case, considering your last name and also the Polish roots of your wife, if I may disclose this tiny detail. So for a few days, we've had a new boss, Pope Leo XIV. You are privileged because the new pontiff is your fellow countryman. We used to have ours, John Paul II, as you perfectly remember. My question to you would be, how will this election influence global politics and also relations between our countries, between Poland and the United States? John Paul II was not only a spiritual leader of the Catholic Church, but also a very important political figure.
Well, let me first point out, and I didn't plan it, but this picture behind me right here, this is a picture of my wife and I being blessed by Pope St. John Paul II on our honeymoon in 1993 in Rome. It was a very, very moving experience for my wife and I. And we're excited about the new Pope, and I think that I'm looking forward to him uniting the church and to try and promote the concepts of love and forgiveness and not judging each other, and also trying to promote peace in the world. And we need his help, I think, especially when considering our conversation today, to try and promote a peace with Ukraine and Russia. But if you follow the same feelings of St. John Paul, you know, we can't appease Russia in the process. We can't let Putin feel that he's going to be rewarded for what he did by invading Ukraine in the first place. And so that would be no different than World War II when we appeased Hitler. So we can't let, we want peace, and blessed are the peacemakers, but we also have to make sure that we don't reward Putin for his actions.
Do you think that President
Putin... I think the Pope could play a very big role in that.
Do you think that President Putin is not being punished enough by the collective West?
Well, I don't think that he's being punished in that he's losing a lot of people, but I don't know that that's what matters to him. And I think that it's very important when making a final deal for peace that the territorial gains and the financial consequences for what's transpired already cannot be too gentle on him. And we have to make sure that everybody in the collective West is participating in our efforts to enforce the sanctions and not doing business with him. And I think there's been some very good things that have happened. Who would have thought when the war first broke out that the Germans would stop taking the oil from them. So what happens with that in the future is a very, very important factor, I think.
Changing tack a little bit and switching to our bilateral relations, Mr. Swartzy, President Trump, in spite of his long-lasting criticism of Europe, has always appreciated Poland's efforts aimed at ramping up its defense capabilities. Can Poland's role in Europe, in the European security architecture, increase even further, especially in light of strained relations between Washington and some major Western capitals?
Well, I think that Poland is a great example. They're leading by example. The money that they've invested in their defense, more than any other country as far as a percentage of GDP. The fact that they've been such a loyal friend to Ukraine and taking in refugees and supporting the military efforts. I went into Rzeszów and J-Town and took the train into Ukraine and met with your military commander. I can't remember what his name is. But I think they've done a great job leading by example. And I think that Poland, with its history, is very, very vigilant and remains vigilant as to the threats that they face, potential threats they face from Russia. I can't begin to tell you how it's indelibly imprinted in my mind. In your military commander's office, there was a topographical map that showed the mountains in the region, and it was so obvious that if Russia was ever to roll through Ukraine, there's nowhere else to go except straight into Poland, based upon the geography of the region. So I think that Poland's history with the Russians, with the Soviets, with other European partners makes it very, very cognizant of how real a potential threat could be. And I think that they're leading by example and encouraging other members of the collective West, as you referred to it earlier, to be as vigilant as they are, and is doing that by example. And I think that we need to continue to build our relationship with Poland. I know there's 10,000 troops or so that are there that rotate in and out, and there's been talk about a permanent base. And that's something I think that if both of our countries could figure out a way forward on that, we should really seriously consider that.
Marcin Przydacz is joining us live, the former Foreign Affairs Advisor to President Duda. Welcome. Marcin, same question to you. Do you think that under the second Trump presidency, Poland's role in this new security constellation, especially after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, will change or will remain unchanged?
Well, once again, thank you very much for having me, and it's good to see you, Ambassador Magierowski, dear Marek, my old good friends, as we used to work together a couple of years ago. Thank you for this question. Of course, it's all up to us. It's not only up to the international situation around us, but also up to us, up to Poland's ambitions, whether we really want to play a key role with regards to that. Because having in mind what President Trump thinks about Poland, what's the image of Poland in his eyes, I think we do have a role to play. Having in mind the geography and the fact that we are neighboring not only Ukraine, but also Russia, Belarus, that we are a leader of the entire region of the Central Europe or the Three Seas initiative, Bucharest 9, we do have a possibility to play a vital role with regard to that. But the question is whether our political elites are ready to do that. Are they ambitious enough? Are they I would say bold enough to play this role. The former government, the conservative government, really wanted to do that. So we believed that having in mind the history of Poland, but also the fact that we are strong with the strength of our region, we could launch several diplomatic initiatives which were quite successful. When it comes to the current liberal globalist government, I'm not that sure. But I'm not really eager to criticize the current government because I know that maybe they are trying hard, but they are not successful with regards to that. When it comes to our bilateral relations with the US, having in mind also all those challenges between Brussels and Washington, I do believe that Polish diplomacy can play a important role in that regard, limiting somehow those tensions and finding the way how to achieve that what unites us rather than divides us. And there is a very good example, the rules about the AI or these microchips, right? Recently changed by the Trump's administration. It shows that diplomacy works. But what we need to do is to talk to President Trump and his administration, not to offend them, as many European leaders tend to do. So there is a room for diplomacy, and we as conservatives in Poland are ready to do that.
And let me just comment on that as well, if I may, Marcin, is that, I'm a Democrat, the president's a Republican. In my district, President Trump won my district by 19,000 votes. So for me to win by 11,000 votes, I had to get 20,000 people who voted for Donald Trump to also vote for me. I think I think that the president has expressed a strong fondness for Poland. I think that's smart for him politically as well. There's 10 million Poles in America, Polish Americans, that are a very, very influential part of the diaspora and can have a big impact on trying to affect his views. We see him moving to a more, I don't want to say it's isolationist, but, he's pulling back from America taking on this responsibility themselves, and he wants to see our Western partners take on more and more responsibility. That's why, again, I think that Poland is a great example for others to follow in the region. And we have to use their example and the relationship they have with the president and with members of Congress like myself, who are very supportive of Poland and what they're trying to accomplish, to try and use that example as a model for success for others to follow.
Well, Congressman, of course,
Fox, excuse me, since you mentioned the term isolationism, another question is for both gentlemen. Apparently there is a rift between America's and Europe's approach towards the war in Ukraine. Most European allies want Ukraine to ultimately prevail, and they are committed to supporting Kiev as long as it takes, and whatever it takes. President Trump, conversely, seemed to be determined to end the war, whatever it takes, at least until recently, and disentangle itself from the conflict. Should Europe step in more robustly now? What are the conditions President Putin should fulfill in order for European actors to even consider starting negotiations with Russia? Marcin.
Well, I do believe that Putin understands only the language of strength, and I'm not fully against talks or diplomatic approach towards Moscow, but the starting point should be a bit different comparing to the current one. I do believe that would be, as the collective West, much more successful if we have started those. Talks on discussion by exerting pressure on Moscow, not on Kiev only. What are the conditions? It is not up to me, as up to neighboring country to bargain or to trade off any regions or lands of Ukraine. It's up to the Kiev administration, to Zelensky. What are their conditions to get the peace? But I'm rather, as you, Marek, said, on this European way of thinking, that we should continue support towards Ukraine and pushing back the aggressive imperial Russia far away from European and NATO borders, rather than appease him, because you can never feed the beast, giving them more and more and more. Mr. Putin, he already expressed his ultimate goal. He wants to be the next Peter the Great. He wants to recreate or re-establish the empire of the Russian. So it's not only about Donbass, about Crimea, or even about eastern regions of Ukraine. It's about the status and changing the international situation, which is now based once on the American role and the second on the international law. This is what Putin is trying to destroy, and that's why we need to be united with Washington, pushing back Mr. Putin, and then making him asking us for conditions.
Mr. your take.
I agree with Marcin 100%, and I think that we have to also, be concerned about Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia and Moldova. And again, I'm concerned. The weapons from the United States of America. How much longer is the existing approvals going to last in weapon supply? 6 months. That's putting it, at a far date. We need our European friends. I disagree with the president in the way he's handled this. I think he's been too nice to Putin in this process, and has been putting too much pressure on Kyiv. But I think that who knows what he's got up his sleeve? He's hard to figure out, and I think that's part of his strategy. But I think that the Europeans and with Poland's leadership need to be as strong as possible, because what Marcin said about Putin only understands strength, and so the more that we can show that Europe and Poland and with the Ukrainians and others will fill the gap as much as possible, the more likely we'll be able to get some sort of resolution if they know that there's going to be strength here. And quite frankly, the example of Poland with our other Western friends teaming up together could be an example not only for our European friends, but also for the president, for him to see the strength exhibited by the Europeans, and using the personal relationships that exist with President Trump to educate him. Sometimes I have a concern that he doesn't appreciate the history, and the Poles are keenly aware of the history, having lived it just a short generation or two ago. So we really need to use your education and knowledge and your personal relationships and your example, and get others to join you to help persuade the president to take a more robust role, especially in the intervening 6 months. And there's no time to wait, and being ready and strong for, number one, if the worst happens, which is that the president and the Congress pull back away, which I don't think we should, but if that, God forbid, that happens, we have to be ready for that. Or that your example will say, hey, listen, we're willing to do this. We're willing to step up more. We're willing to keep on going. Please join us and keep on pushing with us, because let us tell you about the history and what we know about this region and this person.
We've got two questions from the attendees of our conference.
If I may, one comment, Ambassador.
Please, go ahead.
With regard to conditions, I just wanted to recall what I've seen and what I've heard during the negotiations before the outbreak of this full-scale invasion, and what were the conditions of Russia. on its way to building this empire, as I said before. One of those conditions was to push out Americans of Europe. And that is the reason why we, as Central European countries, we want America to be even more present in the region. This is the most important argument. If Putin wants Europe without Americans, that's what he thinks, that Europe makes weaker and easier for him to be successful in his plans. So, and I fully agree with what Congressman said with regard to isolationism. I mean, there are those voices in America, but we as Poland, we need to show the good example that it's not only, I mean, the cost is not only on an American taxpayer. We are also doing our job. We are doing our homework. We've been spending 5% of GDP in Poland for our defense budget. And
more
we
than
could be a
anyone
good
else.
example for the rest. You are right. There are many other Western countries which are still somehow lagging behind with regard to that. There are no free tickets anymore. I mean, we need to be more, I mean, show more solidarity when it comes to our financial activities with regard to the military budget, right?
And let me say, I agree with President Trump that we need the Europeans as a collective group to do more than they've done historically. It cannot be America alone. I'm not happy with the way he's gone about it, but that's the way it is. But the objective of getting the Europeans to step up more, as Poland has, is something we need to be encouraging, and we need to be getting them to take on more responsibility for their own region. And I think the more that happens, the more likely the robust support from the United States can continue. It'll never be, certainly I'll always fight against any idea of America not being involved in Europe. We must be involved in Europe. We're our friends, our allies. We share the same values. Those values are not shared by the Russians, not shared by Vladimir Putin. So we have to help our friends, and we need to build more friends, and we need our friends to take on more responsibility, and we need to continue the friendship going forward.
If I may, gentlemen, a question from one of the attendees of our conference, Bartosz Mroczkowski from Los Angeles, USA. Saudi Arabia promised to invest $600 billion in the US market. This is certainly a factor on which mutual relations will enhance and cooperation in advanced technology will progress. Considering that Poland does not have that kind of money, which sectors of the economy can Poland focus on for close cooperation with the US, and where does Poland have the greatest achievements? Marcin.
Well, first of all, let's concentrate on this, what we are already doing with the US, energy security, but based on the American technologies. We are very much engaged in this cooperation when it comes to civilian nuclear power, building a power plant in Poland together with Westinghouse, Bechtel, and other American companies. So first, nuclear energy. Second, import of energy resources such like LNG. We just built in Poland a couple of years ago LNG terminal, importing a lot of LNG from the US for the Polish economy. But not only, we do believe that we could spread this energy security in the entire region, starting with Czech Republic, but ending maybe in Ukraine one day if they don't want to be dependent on Russian gas. And the third is, of course, the weaponry, so the armaments cooperation. As I said, 5% of GDP spending on our military budget. The vast majority of this is being spent in the US. So it's not only about investing. We are not Saudi Arabia. So it's we have. I mean, our capabilities are a bit limited. But in those 2-3 sectors, of course, we could cooperate. And when it comes to our offer, we have fantastic IT specialists. So I do believe that we could be a good partner in the new technologies sector, providing good stuff, good people, but also good ideas to American industry. But not only by sending people to the US, but rather to cooperating. We've been bleeding with young professionals so many decades already that we cannot afford that. Let's rather think about how to do that together by Poland and the US, but without sending people on the other side of the ocean.
Congressman, how could we reinforce our economic ties?
Well, I always want to encourage the use of the Polish American diaspora. That's a very, very important way to enhance the ties, not just diplomatically, but economically as well. There's a lot of tremendous successful Polish Americans, and we should be encouraging them to invest in Poland and get the Polish Americans to invest in America. There's a pretty equal balance of trade that exists right now, about 16 or $18 billion on one to the other. I forget who's got more than the other, but that's one thing the president likes. You hear him talking about how he can't stand when we have trade deficits. We're pretty even in our balance of trade with Poland right now. This nuclear project, which is going to go on for another decade to construct it, will be a game changer as far as creating energy independence in the region, and will free up opportunities for you to help other neighbors of yours, as you mentioned. I think that there's a lot of. One of the great things about America is that we are great at having talent from other countries come to America and help in America, and I think that the cross-pollination of your talented people with our talented people working together will continue to flow. It's just a matter of building relationships and having those neurons that connect each other and those links that exist. And we just need to be building that. And that's why sometimes just friendships and relationships are so important, because things come from that. So we have this defense relationship. We see you investing more and more. You buying equipment from the United States of America and from other countries as well. You're talking about doing defense production in Poland as well. That's something that Secretary Hegseth has pushed. I think that's an important idea. Who knows what role you could play for the region and being a supplier in the future if you could build out an industry like that. Energy, as you pointed out, other technology. It's just a matter of continuing to build a relationship. But I would heavily focus on building the Polish-American diaspora's relationship with Poland. I know it's strong already, but let's make it stronger.
Congressman, I know you'll need to leave us shortly. You're one of the most hardworking lawmakers on the Hill. Last question to you. A little bit thorny. Should Poland, in your assessment, join forces with the US in the political, economic, and technological rivalry with China?
Yes, I think that we have to recognize that we have strategic adversaries, and there are people that, and this does not mean we want to go to war, but we have people that are China is working against us, and they are trying to build their military superiority, their economic superiority. They're trying to build it on land and sea and space. They have a plan. They know exactly what they're doing. And they do not share our values. When you think of the human rights violations that take place with the Uyghurs, and you think about the Tibetans, and you think about what happened in Hong Kong, what a dramatic change in such a short period of time, and the saber rattling in Taiwan these days, we have to recognize that not everybody shares the same values. Not everybody has the same sense of what is right and what is wrong. And democracy and capitalism are two great systems. Capitalism has produced more wealth than any other system in the history of the world. It's lifted more people out of poverty. It's created more innovation. It's the best economic system, better than any other. And it's based on competition. The stronger you are, the harder working you are, the bigger risk taker you are, the luckier you are, the better you're going to do. But some people are not good competitors. And when you have a system based on competition like capitalism, some people are not going to do well. Little babies are not good competitors. Senior citizens that are getting frail and elderly are not good competitors. You get hit by a car and your legs are broken, you're not going to be a good competitor. You have some other major disease or problem, you're not going to be a good competitor. So we have another system in America. We talk about democracy. All men and women are created equal. So we don't want you to be relegated to a life of misery just because you're not a good competitor. We don't want a baby to starve. We don't want a senior citizen to live in the cold. We don't want to see awful things happen because you're not a good competitor. So we have to put rules in place to try and protect people. And the challenge in our societies these days is you can't go all this way, all capitalism, because then you end up with a bunch of rich people and a bunch of poor people and nobody in between. Or if you go all democracy, you put too many rules in place, too many protections in place, you kill the goose that laid the golden egg. So you have to find a balance between these two systems of democracy and capitalism on a knife's edge. And that's hard to happen in the current environment where everybody's yelling and screaming at each other and tweeting at each other. And you're one of those and you're one of those. You need people to have conversations to find that balance between these two very important systems. But let's recognize that with these two great systems that we share, I know you just celebrated May Day in, what do you call it, on May 1st, the Constitution Day. Next year, Wolna Polska. So we have to figure out, we have to recognize that other folks like China do not share those values. Neither capitalism nor all men and women are created equal, and neither does Russia. So we don't want to go to war, but we at the same time have to recognize who shares our values, and we have to build alliances and build more friends throughout the globe. And right now, Europe is so important to that. Poland is so important to that. Australia and Japan and South Korea are so important to that. And we have to think of, all the time, Canada and Mexico. That's why I get upset with the president sometimes, when he treats our friends the same as he treats our adversaries. We have to treat our friends and encourage our friends as much as possible without being taken advantage of, I guess.
Congressman, thank you so much for your insightful, enlightening remarks. Our warmest greetings to your beloved wife. And I hope we'll meet in Washington or in Warsaw soon to talk further about Poland's role in Europe today. Thank you so much.
Dziękuję bardzo. Marcin, nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Marcin, I'd like to ask you the same question about Poland's attitude towards China and our bilateral relationship with this country.
Well, it's not an easy question, since, as you probably know very well, we are very much preoccupied with our security challenges on our eastern borders. Many experts and even ordinary polls, what they say, China is far away, Russia is very close. So first things first, we need to be more concentrated on Russia. But when you ask me about China, well, we do perceive China as a quite a challenge, of course, for us. And I do partly agree with what Congressman said. China is not democracy. This capitalism is very much different to ours. It's a great competitor. So we need to change our attitude. And by saying our, I don't mean only Polish, but the European attitude, starting with our German and French friends, which are bigger economies. For the last decade, I think they treated China mostly as a good market and good partner in doing business by the collective West, by allowing China to join the WTO. They basically opened all the markets for Chinese products, believing that it could bring political transformation in China. That was not the case. Now we have a huge economic giant, which is, as I said, for us, the challenge. For many countries could be already the threat. So we need to find a way how to somehow find a way to cooperate with China and how to what can I say, intimidate a bit their economic role and the political role, because just after the economic strength, of course, the political plans are coming when it comes to Taiwan, for example, or the South China Sea. On bilateral relations, we do have our own problems. The huge disbalance when it comes to our trade exchange, something like 20 times more importing from China than exporting to China. There was this idea of one belt, one road, so the land corridor or land connection with China. Poland could play a quite important role with regard to that, but there are some conditions for such a project. First, the peace in Ukraine, the cooperation with somehow maybe with Belarus or Russia from Chinese side. Now this project is basically has stopped. The second thing was the 16+1 initiative, which is basically over, I think. It showed that Central European countries are not very much interested in strengthening economic and political, especially cooperation with China. And last but not least, is the challenges in the IT sector, of course, and the cybersecurity sector, let me put it that way, with China. So many question marks, and of course, not easy answers to that, but definitely we don't look at China as a great opportunity, rather as a challenge to tackle.
We'll talk about cyber threats later on, but last question, if I may, and I need you to answer concisely. Circling back to our relationship with Europe, in the not so distant past, a number of European countries were addicted to imports of Russian hydrocarbons. Gas was cheap, trade was thriving. How strong is the feeling in Western Europe, in your opinion, especially in entrepreneurial circles and political elites, that we should return to business as usual in Europe's relationship with Russia? How should Poland and the US react to such plans?
Well, Marek, there is a huge room for improvement, let me say, when it comes to entrepreneurs, the business elites, but also the political elites, especially in Western countries. I'm not very much optimistic when it comes to their attitude towards Russia. Well, when you ask Poles, Lithuanians, Baltic states, but even Scandinavians, they would say no way to come back to business as usual with Russia. But when you ask our French, German, Dutch colleagues, I dare to say there wouldn't be very much that's tough on saying that. Of course, now because of the war and because of Putin's crime and because of the public pressure in the Western Europe, there is no way to business as usual with Russia in months to come. But what the next couple of years brings, we don't know. That's why we need to educate. We need to cut all those links with Russia, starting with Nord Stream 2. This job is partly done already, but less infrastructure with connecting Europe with Russia when it comes to hydrogen resources. Hydrocarbon resources, the better for us. We shouldn't be very much addicted anymore to Russia, because for Russia, all those resources are just political instruments. So what's the role for the US? First, providing also the energy security. I mentioned already LNG. Second, educating and exerting a bit of pressure on business and political elites of Western countries, by showing them that there are many other opportunities, including also the new technologies. We should not forget about the new technologies. But to sum up, to wrap up, I'm not that very much optimistic that all the political and business elites in Western Europe are already done with business as usual. For now, yes, what the future brings, it's up to us.
Marcin Przydacz, a member of the Polish Parliament from Law and Justice, former Foreign Affairs Advisor to President Duda. Thank you so much for this engaging conversation.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we on? Yes. So, Marek, thank you for moderating this very interesting debate. I'm so happy that we have in US and in Poland politicians from both sides, which is very important since we are non-partisan. But this conference about Polish-American relations, and I want to ask you a very basic question. Of course, we know all why Poland needs US, because of investments, because of security, because of political weight. But why US needs Poland now? Why Poland can be attractive for US, Andrew?
Look, allies are force multipliers for the United States to start with. So if you look at the entire history of the Cold War, all the NATO allies, especially those that were the most exposed, were critical. I think in the situation we're in today, Poland is the key hub on the flank. It's the country that is in a very similar position to that of the Bonn Republic, the former West Germany, when it comes to military planning, to operational readiness, and to being able to support countries on the flank. It's a rapidly growing, mid-sized power in Europe that's increasingly influential in the region. It's got a lot of what I call convening capabilities, which is the ability to work and organize, to work with and organize the countries in the Northeastern Corridor. I think Poland's economic relations with the United States will continue to expand. Most of all, look, I mean, we are at a time when the United States is facing really 4 adversaries, and that's really true about the entire alliance. It's Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. So that axis of dictatorships, as I call them, are pushing to dismantle the orders that democracies have sustained over the years. And Poland, because of its role, its resources, its population, and also its very traditional, historically determined pro-American outlook, I think that is why, from the US point of view, Poland is only growing in importance. And I'm not saying this because we're in Warsaw, and I think I'm addressing our gracious hosts here. This will continue to grow in importance. The stronger that Poland will become, the stronger the need for Poland in the alliance will be, and the greater need in Washington will be to build a strong relationship.
Marek, what would be your argument for our American partners?
According to a survey conducted roughly a year ago, if my memory doesn't fail me, by Pew Research, about 93% of Poles hold a favorable view of America and of Americans, which is on top of all countries in that particular ranking. So it's an asset we can build on in order to deepen and to enhance our political and military cooperation. Secondly, as you have already seen, we've had a bunch of panelists whose roots are Polish, who have Polish wives, for example, like Congressman Swartzy. So their connection to Poland, both politically and culturally, is pretty robust. I think this is also an important factor. I wish the Polish diaspora were as influential as other ethnic minorities in the United States, which has never been the case, unfortunately. But we
there
are
is a big room for improvement.
There is a big room in improvement, and I consider it to be our task as the Freedom Institute in Washington, D.C. to fill up this room for improvement and to change this. I think that, and I would like to express my gratitude to all participants of this conference, and especially those of Polish descent, who have contributed over the last decades to this particular portion of our bilateral relationship.
We will work on it. That's our task, that's our job, and I promise you we'll do all our best to make Polish diaspora more important and Polish interest to be promoted in the United States.
Could I add one comment
Sure.
to what Marek said, because that's very important? Favorable views, of the U.S. in Poland. And I would argue that there is a lot of interest in the United States, not just in Warsaw, but all over the country. What's missing on the U.S. side of the Atlantic is kind of sustained Polish institutional presence, and I think that's what you're trying to do, so that we can actually tap into the strength of the Polish-American community, the ethnic diaspora, people who, even if they're, like Jim that spoke at the very beginning, fifth-generation Polish-Americans, but they feel strongly connected to the country from which their forefather emigrated. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to focus now on building a framework for this constituency, but on the other side of the Atlantic in the United States.
It's important indeed, and we're going to work with people of Polish roots like Jim, who is chairing our board, whose family arrived like 150 years ago, and he still speaks
wonderful Polish.
Wonderful Polish. You can listen to my podcast. I interview him, and we talk in Polish. That was wonderful. But also we have an American working with us, and the best example of it's Macy Vincent Joe, who works for us, with us, and help us very much in the United States. And we have a message from Macy Vincent Joe, who works already in Warsaw Freedom Institute in the United States. Macy.
Hello, my name is Macy Vincent Joe, Chief Strategy and Development Officer for the Warsaw Freedom Institute. It is an honor to have you with us today for this inaugural global conference on Poland, USA relations in a new era, focused on security and business. As you'll hear throughout the day, our mission at Warsaw Freedom Institute is to strengthen business and security operations between our two nations. But this important work is only possible with your help. I invite you to consider making a donation to support the Warsaw Freedom Institute as we build our founding operations, expand programming, and grow the next generation of transatlantic leaders. You can give securely online at warsawfi.org. Every donation, large or small, makes an immediate difference. Thank you for standing with us. Together, we are shaping a stronger transatlantic partnership.
Your support is very important, because if you want to be independent, and we are independent and non-partisan, we need strong fundamentals, and so this is very important. WarsawFI.org, it's our website. You can donate through this website. And I would like to thank now to our partners, so 60 Million Congress, World Affairs Council of Miami, and American Institute of Polish Culture, and especially to Beata Paszyc. Thank you so much for cooperating with us. And I would like to thank to our donors and sponsor of this conference, PNC Bank, TMC Law to Law, Andrew Niemiecki, Mark Pienkos, and our board members who financially also support us, Jim Mazurkiewicz, Paweł Przewięźlikowski, Marcin Wojtczak, Jan Skowroński. Thank you so much, guys, for your great support. And my special thanks goes to Lady Blanka Rosenstiel, who is a well-known person among Polish diaspora in the United States, and who agreed to be a honorary chair of our board in the United States. Lady Blanka, thank you so much. Gentlemen, I have one more question before we jump to another part of our discussions. What are similarities between our countries? Between United States and Poland? Good and bad?
No. The good ones is, I would say, first and foremost, the love of freedom. I think Poland has a long tradition that has allowed it to survive all the trials and tribulations of history. And I think the same thing goes for the United States. Very young republic, but that managed to build the power of the state and the nation around that idea of individual liberty. So I think these are the two things that immediately, I mean, this one overarching commitment that links us. I also think that both nations have a sense that without economic success, without entrepreneurship, without investment and growing the economy, even the greatest visions are just hallucinations. So both nations believe that until you build a strong economy, until you've got the resources, the rest will not be achievable. The vision will not be achievable. So this kind of entrepreneurial spirit that I see in Poland, and especially if you see what happened here since the early 1990s, the kind of rebuilding of the post-communist ruin into this very thriving economy, and the same kind of commitment to hard work, I think that's there. So I would think of these kind of just a few aspects in the relationship.
Marek, what do you see? You spent 3 years.
Yes, let me dwell for a few seconds on my personal experience as Polish ambassador, not only to the United States, but also previously to Israel. And I think there are some elements which unite these three nations, which we share and which we have shared for centuries, actually. Family is important for all of us. Faith is important for all of us, regardless of the religious affiliation and denomination. But even for atheists, even for people who do not express their spiritual dimension openly, family and religion are important. So apart from freedom, which I fully agree with you, is one. By the way, if you compare these three terms in three languages, freedom, wolność in Polish, and swoboda in Russian, my impression is that wolność and freedom are much closer to each other than swoboda and wolność, both from Slavic languages.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. That's an interesting point. I also think that just on a kind of personal note, I recently drove through Southern California and through Arizona. And I have to tell you, and then I visited Suprash here in Poland. And I have to tell you that small communities, small towns, are something in the U.S. and in Poland that remind me of how close we are in many ways in terms of our mentality. Friendliness, kind of outgoing attitude, welcoming strangers, even strangers that, seem not to even know where the next gas station is, opening up your doors. And so there are just elements of small communities that had to be self-reliant in the United States and in Poland, that I think we still share that between the two nations.
We have a question which comes now from Waldemar Biniecki, a publisher of Kurier Polski from Milwaukee. And the question came from United States. What role can the Polish diaspora in the United States play in supporting this initiative launched by Warsaw Freedom Institute? Thank you so much for this very important question for us. So, of course, we need your network. We need your ideas. Spread the word about our initiative. And if you ask, I can answer. We need financial support. If we want to be independent, we need help in fundraising. This is very important. But also, please do contact with us and please spread news about your activity. We'll be happy also to help and to support any activity of Polish diaspora in the US. I know if you have, Marek.
It was one of my priorities during my tenure as Poland's ambassador to the United States to encourage the Polish diaspora, the Polish communities in various cities and regions and states to be more deeply engaged politically, because I think this is something which is missing in the Polish community's daily experience. I wish I saw the Polish diaspora more involved in American politics at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level, because I think that we still have too few members of Congress and too few members of local councils, for example, with the last names ending in ski and in ich.
Yeah. What I would add to this is something I've been thinking about quite a bit. I've attended some gatherings that brought together people of different ethnicities, and not only Polish Americans, but when the German American diaspora congregates, or people of Irish origin, which every single culture has a very distinct way of doing things. When it comes to the Polish American community, I would like to apply the Mel Gibson principle from Braveheart: unite us.
Yes.
If you look at the numbers of people who are of Polish origin, and what Marek was saying, this should translate at influence and activism, not just from time to time when people come together and celebrate the Constitution Day, but the kind of grunt work, working in the trenches, building a network, reaching out to people from your community and beyond your community that can then network with you. I mean, building that network of relationships, I think that's something that the Warsaw Institute should be doing going forward in the United States, because that's really missing in my view.
What is very important for us also to unite Polish entrepreneurs. Traveling around the United States,